Kuzuzangpo and welcome to this week's edition of Bhutan This Week with me, Wangdue. The week's top stories. Bhutan recorded more regional tourists compared to international visitors between January to August this year. Agriculture Ministry say the rice available in the country is more than the total requirements of the population. Bhutan now has 28 certified arbitrators to deal with construction-related disputes. Prime Minister Singh Tobge said UN's vision and principles set out in the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development resonates strongly with Bhutan's development philosophy of gross national happiness. The Prime Minister was speaking at the United Nations Summit in New York last Friday.
Mr. President, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the United Nations is 70 years old. For 70 years, the United Nations has maintained global peace, protected human rights, and upheld the international law. It has helped to stop the use and spread of nuclear weapons and prevented a third world war. For 70 years, the United Nations has reaffirmed the sovereignty of nations, bringing into its fold new member states irrespective of their size, population, wealth, and power. This is especially important. In fact, it is critical for otherwise small, vulnerable countries like mine, Bhutan. For 70 years, the United Nations has led the global fight against poverty, disease, and hunger. As we conclude the Millennium Development Goals, our peoples are now healthier, they live longer, and they are better educated. Today, the United Nations is poised to do more. We have set ourselves an ambitious agenda for sustainable development, one that calls for collective action to eradicate poverty, reduce inequalities, and to save our planet. The vision and principles set out in the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development resonate strongly with my country's own development philosophy, gross national happiness. As early as the 1970s, we in Bhutan have stressed that gross national happiness is more important than gross national product. Gross national happiness, or GNH, is a holistic approach to development aimed at improving the happiness and well-being of our people. For that, we carefully balance material growth with social inclusiveness and environmental sustainability, all within a framework of good governance. GNH drives development in Bhutan. Our people, for example, enjoy free healthcare and free education even though we are a poor country. And our economy is still largely clean, green, and renewable. But more importantly, 6 years ago, in 2009, we pledged to remain carbon neutral. In fact, we are carbon negative. That's because 72% of our country is under forest cover, and more than half my country is protected as national parks and wildlife sanctuaries. And most importantly, we have institutionalized good governance by embracing democracy. Democracy in Bhutan is unique in that we, the people, didn't want it. We didn't demand for democracy, and we certainly didn't fight for it. Instead, democracy was instituted in an unprecedented manner. It was imposed by our king against the will of his people. This, in my humble view, is GNH in action. His Majesty the King has called GNH development with values. This, in effect, is what the Sustainable Development Goals are about: development with values. My government has already started integrating the SDGs in our development plans, and we look forward to working diligently to fulfilling their promises. The 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development is an exciting testament to the collective will and wisdom of all nations to transform our world meaningfully. But to transform our world, we must first transform ourselves. We must transform the United Nations. We must transform it to make it fit for purpose, to implement the Sustainable Development Goals. The United Nations has served us well for 70 years. To serve us for the next 70 years, it must stay relevant. And to stay relevant, it must reflect the geopolitical realities of today. Countries like India and Japan, Brazil and Germany must be made to serve as permanent members in the Security Council. And Africa must be appropriately represented. If we don't reform the United Nations, we risk making this sacred institution irrelevant and ineffective. That would harm all nations, but small countries, vulnerable countries, countries like mine and many others, would suffer the most. Now, if we reform the United Nations, if we make it relevant and if we make it effective, it will continue to serve us well. And 70 years hence, our future generations will gather here in this very hall, and they, like us, will celebrate the United Nations for making their world more secure, more peaceful, and more prosperous. Thank you, and Tashidile.
Bhutan recorded more regional tourists compared to international visitors between January to August this year. Over 66,000 visitors were regional and some 32,000 were international dollar-paying tourists.
Visitors from India, Bangladesh and Maldives saw a significant increase of over 70%. Officials from Tourism Council said international arrivals decreased after the earthquake incident in Nepal. The incident supposedly caused many to believe the whole region was affected and avoided traveling. Tourism Council said after the earthquake, regional tourist arrivals increased as many chose to travel to Bhutan than Nepal. But the Thimpu saw a marked decrease in tourist arrivals this year. More than 3,000 tourists booked rooms to arrive during the festival this year, whereas a record of over 5,000 visited Thimpu last year during the Sichu. Officials said tourist arrivals during the Sichu dropped this year as it was held in September, while last year the Thimpu Sichu fell in the month of October when the tourist arrivals generally increased. Tourism Council of Bhutan also held a painting competition today to celebrate the World Tourism Day in Thimpu. Some 30 students took part in the event themed 1 billion tourists, 1 billion opportunities. Sonam Panjo for BBS News.
Gelfu police detained 2 men, a Bhutanese and an Indian, for allegedly trying to exchange Bhutanese currency with counterfeit Indian currency. They were apprehended from the border gate on Wednesday. The 58-year-old man from Tashigang had supposedly asked his Indian counterpart to be the middleman. He is said to have asked the Indian man to exchange fake Indian currency amounting to 9,500 rupees with Bhutanese currency. In return, the Bhutanese had promised a commission. Police said the Bhutanese man brought the counterfeit notes from the Indian town of Jagon. The police recovered a total of 11,500 counterfeit Indian rupees from the man. A man is allegedly conning shops in Thimpu and Phuntsholing by issuing checks. The man, who owns a brokerage house in Golakha, apparently comes to their stores to buy commodities, and instead of paying cash, he gives them checks. However, when the shopkeepers try to encash, the checks bounce. The shopkeepers say either there is no sufficient balance in the account or the account number is fake.
The shopkeepers say The man comes to their stores well dressed and furnishes them all his details, such as a copy of his driving license, mobile number, and his vehicle number.
He was, ready to furnish all the documents. So we thought it is true with the bank also. So later on, next day, when we sent for a deposit, so we have found that I think it was, without insufficient fund. I think a lot of people are in line against him or after him. So I think bank has every right to bar him, or bar in the sense you not to have his account unless he has a sufficient fund.
He came one evening and took a laptop and issued me a check. When I checked in with the bank, I came to know he had given me a fake account number. I think the bank should close the account of the man or seize the checkbook, since it has happened to many people.
The man supposedly carries checks from Bank of Bhutan, Bhutan National Bank, and Bhutan Development Bank. Officials from the Bank of Bhutan say they have not received any formal complaints yet. However, they said the man had already closed his account with them. Bhutan National Bank said they tried to call the man, but there was no answer.
Con man goes around issuing checks without balance in his account. I think whoever has received the check, because that is a transaction that has been executed, he issued the check and he has taken some goods and services. So he has issued a check without adequate balance in the bank. The person who has received the check should take the case to the court. Then only if the case happens in the court can issue the bank to instructing the bank to give a statement, balance confirmation statement. Then only we can adhere to this instruction of the court. There is a Negotiable Instrument Act which needs to be, I think, promulgated and fully made aware among all stakeholders in it.
We also could not contact the man despite repeated phone calls. According to the Penal Code of Bhutan, the offence of fraudulent check writing shall be a value-based sentencing.
Even after over a month since the border wall in Gelfu was damaged, it is yet to be repaired. The wall was damaged by a flood last month. Since then, people and animals are seen crossing the border from here. According to sources, the tight security at the entry gate is useless when there are people smuggling controlled substances and tobacco products from the area. Locals also said since there are no security personnel in the area, it is risky. Meanwhile, the Dzongkhag administration said since the area falls under Golfu Thomde, they cannot do anything, but Thomde said if concerned authorities have due permission from the Bureau of Law and Order, Thomde is ever ready to provide machinery and other support. Even the immigration office reported the issue to the Dzongkhag. The immigration officials said despite the shortage of human resource, they do conduct inspections in the area. While local rice production remained more or less the same, imports have continued to rise in the last 5 years. Rice imports increased from 54,000 metric tons in 2011 to 79,000 metric tons last year.
A calculation by the Agriculture Ministry revealed the availability of rice in the country through domestic production and imports far exceeded total requirements of the population. This means the share of rice available for each individual has increased significantly, although the number of people did not increase much between 2010 and 2014. For instance, the per capita rice consumption in 2010 was only 138 kg a year, while it reached 177 kg a year in 2014. This was more than the highest rice-consuming countries in Asia like Vietnam, Laos and Bangladesh. Officials from the ministry said to acquire Indian rupee, traders bring in other products but declared it as rice, and this fake import could be the cause for unreasonable increase in per capita consumption. The spike in imports has also affected the ministry's target in improving food self-sufficiency. The official said the rice self-sufficiency rate has fallen below 50%. The Anti-Corruption Commission is in the process of investigating on the issue of fake import. It has also been learned that besides rice, all other commodities which are tax-free has also seen an increase in imports in recent times. Nirib Galson for BBS News.
Even after over 3 weeks since a Himalayan black bear attacked cattle in Rukubji in Wangdue, farmers are still spending sleepless nights guarding their cattle. Farmers are now ready to kill the animal if forestry officials allow them in order to deal with the nuisance.
Right now I'm here at the cow shed here in Rukubjila. Time right now is about 11 p.m. and the people are still awake guarding their cattle from bear. At this time of the night, usually the people out here said that the bear come and they roam around their cow shed.
It has become a daily routine for 48-year-old Pasang and his fellow farmers in Rukubji to guard their cattle every night beginning this month. And nights are becoming cold. And whenever cattle makes unusual sounds, it alerts the farmers.
It has been about a month since the bear started to come. The bear came at around 9 p.m. on 5th September. Since then, we have been continuously guarding the cattle. We could clearly see under the torchlight in the night. When we chase them by shouting, it just goes away.
The cowsheds doesn't stand a chance. The bear is an intelligent animal. It destroys the stone wall and wooden poles and kills the cattle. And when we try to intervene, it attacks us.
Last time the bear had killed a cow by breaking the door of my cow shed and took the calf away in the forest.
But the bear has not attacked for the past 1 week. It killed over a dozen cattle this month alone. Farmers said bears used to come even in the past, but never attacked the cattle. Today, they are not only guarding their crops, but also cattle.
If we kill the bear, it will help everyone. But we need permission to do that. If we get the permission, it will benefit us because we don't have to spend sleepless nights. Till now, we just had to guard potatoes. But now, we even have to guard the cattle.
These are the pictures taken by forestry officials. According to the Forest and Nature Conservation Act 1995, Himalayan black bear falls under totally protected species and no one is allowed to kill it. The Director General of Department of Forest and Park Services said they will relocate the animal if it continues to threaten the lives of people and animals there. Compiled for Sujaman Thapa, Sringdamar Galson, BBS News.
The Construction Development Board has been seeing an increasing number of disputes among construction companies in the country. This, the Director General of the board said, was due to more number of constructions and contractors involved. There are almost 4,000 contractors registered with the board.
In between June 2013 and 2014, the Construction Development Board or CDB solved 3 cases. The following year, it increased to 8, and currently, while the CDB has solved 2 cases, 3 are pending.
Common disputes that are being put up for settlement, many of these contracts, or many of these construction-related contracts, and the request for arbitration will pertain to, time extension not being granted. Also, there is imposition of liquidated damages, and then we also have issues or cases relating to cost escalation.
He also said there are cases of mismatch between the bid amount of the project and the one incurred while implementing it. Initially, the cases were solved by the board's interim National Arbitration Committee. However, with the lack of members in the committee since the beginning of this year, cases remained pending. There were 7 members in the committee.
Now, starting from 2015, we are not able to meet the quorum of the Interim National Arbitration Committee, basically because some members have been transferred elsewhere, some members are pursuing further studies, and we are also not getting replacement of members from these agencies.
However, such a problem is expected to be solved soon. 30 individuals, including lawyers and senior engineers from 15 various public and private agencies, are undergoing a training to be certified arbitrators. It is being conducted by the CDB in collaboration with the Construction Industry Arbitration Council of India. The 3-day training began in the capital today. Tamchisam, PBS News.
Bhutan now has certified arbitrators to deal with disputes related to construction activities. 28 engineers and lawyers were awarded certificates after a 3-day training on Wednesday. Aggrieved parties will have to come to Thimphu to arbitrate disputes.
Arbitration is to relieve the courts from congestion and prevent the undue cost and delay in resolving disputes.
So arbitration training is actually, what I feel is very important and very impactful, will be very impactful in future, because this dispute, instead of going to the court, can actually be arbitrated. So it need not be going to the court all the time. As of now in Bhutan, we do not have arbitrators, and this training actually is training most of the engineers and the legal officers as an arbitrator.
This arbitration is going to help most of the contractors in settling the dispute. So the arbitrative decisions, we can improve the standard bidding of document or procurement documents.
It is mostly the contractors and procuring agencies that are in disputes, and both the aggrieved parties should agree for arbitration. The arbitrators will not be allowed to conduct arbitration on their own without the intervention of Construction Development Board.
All these participants actually become arbitrators. Now that they have been given 3 days training on the procedures of arbitration, the do's and don'ts of arbitration, what we need to do now is to coach them, to guide them, and also to give them all cases on which arbitration has already been conducted.
Some of these certified arbitrators will serve as the member of Interim National Arbitration Committee, which had no member since the beginning of this year. Tamchisam, PBS News.
Shamgang police detained a 47-year-old man from Womling village under Shinkargyok on suspicion of stealing explosive decode cable. The cable was supposedly stolen from the construction site of Shinkargyok Road. He was apprehended on September 14th after the supervisor lodged a written complaint to the police. The supervisor had lodged a complaint earlier this year, even though the cable was stolen in 2014. The suspect says he is being framed for Shinkar Road realignment dispute as he had taken a different stand than that of the supervisor. The accused also said that the cable was given to his son-in-law by the supervisor who filed the complaint. Despite cultivating apple for over 3 decades now, people of Bumtang has neither seen a significant increase in yield or improvement in quality of the fruit. Consequently, it is used mostly in producing apple wine and juice.
People in all 4 gewaks of Bumtang grow apples. Today, there are around 8,000 apple trees in total, but most have been affected by a disease known as apple scab. The disease manifests as dull black or grey-brown scratch on the surface of the fruit, making it unattractive. This discouraged farmers from growing apples. They instead started exploring other more lucrative options like potato, sunflower, and vegetable farming. Experts say apples thrives best in places within 2,000 meters above the sea level. However, Bumtang lies at an altitude of about 2,500 meters. This could have hampered the poor yield and quality of the fruit, experts added. On the other hand, Dzongkhag Agriculture Extension Supervisor Luda Wangdue says if people put in an extra effort, the yield can improve.
There are few examples in Bumtang where people followed proper procedure to plant and cultivate apple, and it has worked. In general, it seems like people here are not giving enough time to grow apple since there are many other lucrative cash crops in Bumtang.
While growing apples, everything needs to be done on time. For now, we are planning to carry out a research on a few apple gardens as a pilot project. We want to see how we can increase apple production in Bhutan.
3 varieties of apple, namely Golden Delicious, Red Delicious and Lobo, are grown in Pumthang. Compiled for Komal Karka, Dikilhamo, PBS News.
Well then, that's all we have for this week's edition. Do join us next time. Until then, goodbye.